Army pilots are straight up not having a good time. Over the past 8 months or so, they've seen one announcement after another about the Army's plans to cut hundreds of helicopters and thousands of aviators, crew, and maintainers to replace them with what seems to be vague, hand-wavy references to drones. To make things more concerning for hopeful Army aviators, in October, Lockheed Martin unveiled the U-Hawk, a version of the Black Hawk helicopter that can fly itself, no human pilot required, just a Joe with a tablet. The knee-jerk pundit response to all of this is to say that manned helicopters are on the way out, particularly attack helicopters, since small drones seem to be stealing their attack and reconnaissance jobs over the battlefield, especially in Ukraine. But here at Task and Purpose, we do the research to give you a more nuanced view of what's actually happening within Army aviation. What we found is that manned helicopters, even attack helicopters, still play a vital role in modern conflict, including over Ukraine. But it looks a lot different than it has in the past. Welcome back to Task and Purpose. I'm Kyle. Let's break all this down. But before we get to that, a quick word from today's sponsor, Odoo. If you're in manufacturing, you already know the challenges. Orders stack up, delays start sneaking in, all your tools that are supposed to make your life easier start to do the opposite. Odoo fixes that. Odoo gives you one dashboard where you can manage assembly stations, check load times, track work orders, keep up with shipments. Everything that happens on your floor, you can see. Their barcode app makes it easy to scan and log components in real time right from the production line. So you spend less time fixing data errors and more time getting orders out the door. Need to check a worksheet or bill of materials? It's all right there, right in the dashboard, connected and synced. With Odoo, you have everything covered from planning to production with smooth and simple software. Start with your first app for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com. You'll be happy you did, and we'd like to thank Odoo for sponsoring today's episode. First, let's recap some of the doom and gloom for Army helicopters. In April, the Pentagon pushed out a memo directing the Secretary of the Army to reduce and restructure manned attack helicopter formations and augment them with inexpensive drone swarms capable of overwhelming adversaries. Then in May, the Army Secretary and Chief of Staff announced a plan to cut one aerial cavalry squadron per combat aviation brigade, or CAB. That'd be about 264 Apache AH-64 attack helicopters, according to our back-of-the-napkin math. Also on the chopping block are all of the Army Reserve's aviation units, which is another 220 helicopters, according to our rough estimates. Then in September, the Army said it would cut about 6,500 active duty aviation jobs, including enlisted flight crew and maintenance, over the next 2 years. This will be made up mostly of junior soldiers just starting their careers, and combined with the reserve cuts, that's almost a 10,000 person drop in the Army's aviation branch. All of this comes as a bit of a surprise at a time when most other services and the aviation industry in general is struggling to recruit and retain pilots and ground crews. Just 5 years ago, the Army offered pay raises to keep helicopter pilots around longer because helicopters are really useful assets. After all, they can pick people and stuff up pretty much anywhere and drop them off pretty much anywhere relatively quickly. They're also really good at destroying things. Jack Watling, a senior research fellow for land warfare at the Royal United Services Institute, a London-based think tank, said at an Army Aviation Association of America conference this May that, "I've never heard a combat commander in a war say that they have enough helicopters. Why? Because you can always find jobs for them. So if helicopters are so useful, why get rid of so many of them?" So why cut so many helicopters? In a word, drones. When Task and Purpose reported on helicopter job cuts in September, an Army spokesperson said drones are making war in the air more accessible, and the Army has to, quote, rapidly transform to keep up. Some of this is inspired by the war in Ukraine, where thousands of cheap drones can do the job a scout helicopter used to do without putting lives at risk. Ditto that for strikes where drones and loitering munitions have killed or disabled enough armored vehicles to make any Apache fan jealous. The writing on the wall appeared in 2024 when the Army stopped developing a future attack and reconnaissance aircraft in favor of drones. Army Chief of Staff General Randy George said at the time that aerial reconnaissance has fundamentally changed. Sensors and weapons mounted on a variety of unmanned systems and in space are more ubiquitous, further reaching, and more inexpensive than ever before. And he's right. Jack Watling, the British helicopter expert, listed 3 major threats facing manned helicopters on today's battlefield. One is layered air defenses. Back in Desert Storm, Watling explained you could hit a central node to disable an entire air defense network. But today, there are so many radars and surface-to-air weapons that you just can't take out a network in one shot. The second threat are drones and the systems for countering drones. Watling estimated there are about 50 drones over every 10 kilometers on the front line of Ukraine at any given time. To counter that, ground troops set up acoustic sensors and radar all over the battlefield, which track and classify individual UAVs. The belt of sensors has no problem picking up UAVs, which are tiny and relatively quiet, so it's all too easy for them to pick up helicopters, which are a lot bigger and a lot louder. Watling said what the Ukrainians are doing and the Russians are now adopting is using that passive sensor laydown to cue launches of UAVs with an explosive to crash into enemy reconnaissance vehicles. Now, I guarantee that is a problem for helicopters because that is a very, very dense, very, very deadly belt of capability which is looking for you. The third threat is long-range precision fires like the Russian Iskander missile. Since sensors and missiles are so widespread, if your helicopter lingers at a forward arming and refueling point, or FARP, which is just a fun word to say, a little too long, it's basically dead, which makes maintenance and logistics for helicopters a serious challenge. If that's not enough, picture the Indo-Pacific, where US national security experts fear a war with China may go down. The advantage of a big ocean is that those dense enemy sensor belts are more spread out, but the disadvantage is that everything else is more spread out too, including your supply lines. Those all sound like pretty tough challenges, so why is Ukraine, the country with the most direct experience with these threats, looking to buy AH-1Z and UH-1Y attack and utility helicopters just like the ones the US Marine Corps flies? And why is Poland, which is Ukraine's next door neighbor and a very close observer of the Ukraine-Russia war, set to become the biggest operator of Apache gunships outside of the United States? And then in the US, Army officials expect to fly the H-60 until 2070 and the Apache into the 2060s. Clearly, there is something complicated going on with the role of attack helicopters on a modern battlefield, so let's get into it. It's a good thing helicopters don't have ears because they didn't hear no bell.
I didn't hear no bell.
Actually, the only bell they heard is the kind that makes helicopters. There's lots of layers to that one, but if it flew over your head, all you need to know is that helicopters and their human crews still have plenty to offer in modern conflict. In his presentation, Watling listed 3 strengths that make them indispensable: flexibility, fusion of information, and reach and speed. Like our old pal Gumby, the unofficial patron saint of the US military, helicopters are flexible. You can use a helicopter for anything from medevac to reconnaissance, and the British Army has even used Apaches to carry around infantry. And unlike fixed-wing aircraft, they can take off and land pretty much anywhere you have a clear view of the sky. The second strength is the human crew, who can make decisions and connections in ways that computers just can't yet. And as Army aviators, they have a unique understanding of both land and ground forces, which help them put together strike packages that can topple the enemy. In a recent story on taskandpurpose.com, our reporter Patty Nyberg spoke to 7 active duty Army aviators and 1 Chief Warrant Officer 5, because yes, those do exist, and the Army allows enlisted to go Chief Warrant Officer to fly, which is just badass. Anyway, one of those unicorns said that 70% of what the pilots do is coordination, not just flying. When things don't go according to plan, which in combat is a lot of the time, it takes humans talking to each other to get back on track. So if comms aren't working the way they should, or the guys you're picking up aren't where they are supposed to be, it's going to be difficult for a robot to figure out what to do next. The third strength is reach and speed. The advantage of drones is that they are cheap, but that means they also tend to be lightly armed with limited range. A manned rotorcraft isn't long range by any means, but they fly a lot further, with many more weapons than their beep-boop friends. This lets them strike places the enemy might not expect. The Russians are taking full advantage of these strengths. Early in the war, they flew too slow and too high while using outdated maps, bad night vision, and ineffective countermeasures. They generally flew as if they did not fear being shot down, and in the first year of the war, 41 of them were shot down, according to Italian Army Lieutenant Colonel Emiliano Pellegrini, who works for NATO's Joint Air Power Competence Center. But they learned fast. Pellegrini said in a statement in February that Russia updated its tactics, countermeasures, maps, night vision, and other tools so that just 19 helicopters were shot down in the second year of the war. Russian helicopters are also teaming up with drones, which can serve as scouts, comms relays, and electronic warfare platforms that enhance the capability and survivability of crewed platforms without putting more lives at risk. The US Air Force is pursuing the same concept through a program called Collaborative Combat Aircraft, which are basically robot fighter jets that fly and fight alongside their crewed wingmen. Now the US Army wants to bring that same idea to helicopters. In October, Brigadier General Kane Baker told reporters that the service was weighing options for a large autonomous aircraft that can take off and land vertically just like a helicopter. We're not sure when exactly to expect these drones or what they might look like, but Boeing and Bell say they are working on robot tilt rotors, think a robot Osprey that can fly like fixed-wing aircraft. Flying like a fixed-wing aircraft gives the drone better range and speed, which would make it a lot more useful over the Indo-Pacific and help it keep up with the MV-75, aka V-280 Valor, the tilt rotor transport the Army is bringing in to replace the Black Hawk. General Baker said these larger tilt-rotor drones would let the Army, quote, increase mass while also reducing the amount of aviators you've got to have in the air, unquote. That comment may indicate what the Army plans to do with all the space freed up by getting rid of so many of its current helicopters. The goal probably is not to replace crewed helicopters entirely, but to augment them with autonomous stuff large and small. The larger drones would probably be on one end of a spectrum of autonomous aircraft. On the lower end are something called launched effects, which are smaller, simpler drones that can be launched from other platforms, such as the new U-Hawk. These launched effects can provide reconnaissance, electronic warfare, or communications relays, or act as loitering munitions or decoys. Those little launched effect drones and the larger drones firing them could be helpful in spotting targets. Apache pilot Major Philip Savoy wrote in 2024 that attack helicopters are most effective when targeting enemies on the move, because they don't have to hover around trying to spot something concealed under camouflage. More drones collecting information means better detection of moving targets so that a helicopter can get in, strike, and get out as quickly as possible, minimizing exposure time. Drones could also help with the suppression of enemy air defenses, or SEAD for short. Former Apache pilot Stephen Olguin wrote for War on the Rocks that right now the Army typically waits for the Air Force or Navy to take out enemy air defenses. But there are so many surface-to-air weapons these days that the Army needs to start taking care of itself. Surface-to-air missile ranges are not rings of certain death, Olguin said. Terrain and ground clutter mean there are often ways to sneak up on those threats and destroy them, especially with new weapons like the Spike missile, which can hit targets from 32 kilometers away. Apaches in particular are also finding a new job as a counter-UAS platform. In a recent live-fire test called Operation Fly Swatter, Army Apaches downed 13 drones out of 14 tries. To do this, they used Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, or APKWS, which are just laser-guided 70mm rockets, and they also used the Apache's 30mm gun. By integrating with Link 16, a tactical data network used by NATO, they can rely on ground sensors and other detection methods to locate and kill enemy drones relatively cheaply. Missiles, drones, helicopters, all of these things have to work together to make a difference on a modern battlefield. Watling and others envision a mix of high-end aircraft operated by highly skilled humans working alongside a lot of drones that are designed for simplicity so they can be built quickly and in large numbers. That way you can put together strike packages to target enemy air defenses or hit a tank formation on the move, or whatever else you need to do. All of this sounds like a great vision for the future, but at this point that's all it is, a vision. Thousands of Army aviators will lose their jobs over the next few years, and the Army has not laid out exactly how it plans to replace them or with what. Its collaborative combat helicopters are still on the drawing board, and whether the US has the industrial base to churn out a lot of them and even more launched effects is unclear. There is a lot of uncertainty, but in the meantime, remember this: helicopters, like other weapons such as tanks and aircraft carriers, aren't obsolete just because the threats facing them are evolving. But they do have to evolve to stay relevant, and that's precisely what is happening today. Let us know what you think in the comments, and not just about Army aviation, but like the use of drones in general. And this is something I wanted to say in the video, but it couldn't fit neatly, so I'll just jam it at the end here. Are we making a mistake mimicking what Ukraine is doing, where they're stuck in mostly attrition warfare, and our entire doctrine is based on maneuver warfare? What works for them, it works for them because they really don't have a choice, but it might not work for us. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. Alright, now it's channel update time, and today David Roza wrote this script and Savvy edited the video. Once again, my email is kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com. I've been putting it out there for anybody, service members, veterans, civilians, anyone who needs to just say hey because maybe they're feeling low, or they just, want to say hey over the holidays. Go ahead, shoot me an email. I'll reply. I've been hitting, I take about an hour chunk out of each day to reply. It's been really great talking to you guys. I feel like it's helping make me a little more comfortable because now I kind of know you all. It just helps. Now I'm kind of delivering this as if I'm talking to my friends, which is where I used to, or how I used to deliver the videos for Instagram when I would do the shorts. Anyways, today I'm wearing Semper Gumby. You can buy this and other stuff at store.taskandpurpose.com. Use code BLOCKLEAVE, all one word. It'll be at the bottom here for 20% off. I'm going to leave that code running to the end of the year. If you're watching this after 2025 ends, you can use code ACTUALLYWATCH for 10% off. Other than that, I just really want to say thank you for all the support. I know I say it in a lot of videos, but every video we drop, I'm just kind of blown away by the support, the encouragement, even the criticism and the feedback is really, really helpful for me. I need that stuff because I work alone mostly in my office. I'm looking around at it. It's not very big, and there's not a whole lot of people I can bounce this stuff off of. Or it's kind of weird saying like, hey, watch this and let me know what you think to like people I know outside of here. It still blows my mind that people actually watch this. But anyways, really thanks to all of you. We're gonna repay you. I don't know how else to say it, but like David and I and the editors work real hard to deliver a good product because you guys deserve it, and we just really appreciate it. Anyways, I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed. I will see you next time. Thank you very much once again for being here.